Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the second tier of the GPVWC career ladder. We are here for the Superlights race around the Autódromo Enzo e Dino Ferrari. I am Tom Dillon. Alongside me this evening is Ewan Gale. And, well, Ewan, we're finally here in week 2 of the opening round of the season. And Imola has so far delivered some incredible racing across the lower tiers. And we're now here with the big boys. We've got Formula 1 hardware, finally. And judging by qualifying, it's going to be an intense race.
Yeah, absolutely. Qualifying was absolutely nothing in the top 10, really. About half a tenth of a second covering the top 5 drivers. And this is what we've been waiting for all winter. You know, it's been a long time since we had cars on track in Superlights, as it's now called. The second tier, not Super League Lights anymore, Superlights. A lot easier for us to say as well in a hurry. So really looking forward to getting racing underway. And yeah, let's go. As you said, qualifying a really good indicator of how competitive it's going to be this year.
And there you can see we've got 51 laps around this 4.9 kilometre circuit. So it's not the longest circuit, Imola. And it certainly won't be the easiest to overtake on. However, it's going to be a completely dry race, of course. And that means strategy on the 3 compounds of tyre we're running this evening is going to be really, really crucial. And of course, that DRS is going to play such a huge factor down that huge run into turn 1. And, well, again, judging by qualifying, if people are so close together, I don't think they're going to see many big gaps this evening.
No, it's all going to be about making the fewest mistakes. Sometimes you don't have to be the fastest to win the race. You just have to make sure you're fast in the right areas of the track. So especially here, as you were talking about, out of Ravazza, traction absolutely crucial for that long drag down to Tamburello corner. That's where most of the moves will be being made. And yeah, so close in qualifying. Of course, we will bring all of the results from qualifying in the build-up to the race, but what was nice about the qualifying result, as we'll get to in a minute, is the array of teams that were in the top 15. It wasn't just a procession to start the season. There was a real mix-up of names there, so that bodes well for the season ahead as well.
And so out of the 5 tyre compounds that are in Superlights this season, we are running the fastest 3. We're running the softest 3, the C1, C2 and C3. And that has meant that we're probably going to see a lot of tyre wear this evening. And it is the purple soft tyre. Well, on race, it's the purple soft tyre. In the game, it's the red soft tyre. Has been the favoured choice for the majority of the top 10. However, we are predicting that everyone outside the top 10 will be trying to start on those medium tyres and make the one-stopper work. So it's going to be a race where strategy is absolutely pivotal. And I think in 51 laps, there's a lot of laps to make a mistake, but there's also a lot of laps to work wonders with the strategy. And make no mistake about it, these drivers have done a lot of testing in these cars. They probably know exactly what to do in every single scenario that you can throw at them.
Yeah, and we came into the season last year thinking that they were going to split between 1 and 2 stops, and actually the first few races they were going 2 and 3 stops, such was the tyre wear. So it'll be interesting to see how the new cars react to the tyres and what they do around a similar circuit. Because strategy can be as crucial as how fast you are. We saw that plenty of times last year. Plenty of great drives, Sandeep Singh especially, Pescara last year, this year in the Road to Formula Racing machine. No, he was one of the best at making an alternate strategy work and flying up through the field. So, no, plenty of other ways you can get up the field, even if qualifying hasn't gone your way. Chris Butcher, probably one of the guys we're expecting to see fly up the field, not the qualifying he was looking for in the THR. But his teammate Luke Maguire was up there. So that gives scope for teams to mess around with the strategy as well, having some people out of position, and you're splitting your cards that way then.
And interestingly as well, we've got a big split in who was fastest in qualifying and who is sort of showing coming good on the race pace runs at the moment in the warm-up, because we have had the checkered flag fly there. So we'll be going to the race session in a moment. And I think one of the key things to mention in this race is that because we've got 51 laps, the race length is going to be around an hour long. And that means that there's enough time for someone to make a bold strategy call, the sort of Hungary style alternate strategy sort of work. We've got probably about 3/4 length of a Grand Prix here, which means that sort of shift in strategy and making that call of, we're going to come in with 10 laps to go and see if we can pit for the softer tyre compound and just sort of chase down someone on our worn hards. That is something that we could potentially see, be it quite bold.
Yeah, and the timing of the pit stops as well. It's not just the added confidence and grip you get off the new rubber. It's the fact that it's quite a slow pit lane. It's next to a long drag down the front straight. So the timing of the pit stop could be just as crucial as how many pit stops you're making. What you don't want to do is, of course, get into traffic and use up all the best of those new tyres, fighting your way past people that aren't in the same race as you, with all due respect. So it comes down to the whole package to win a race in Superlights and Super League as well. We'll see on Thursday. The field is so competitive, the standard is so good that you've really got to get the full 51 laps together, race start included, qualifying included, pit stops included, and have a clean race to make sure that you get the best out of it.
And of course, these drivers are very, very experienced indeed. The majority of them will have raced in the lower career ladder tiers. Of course, there's prize money on the line for Superlights as well, and Super League. That might be a lie, actually. I think it might only be Super League that has the prize money. So excuse me on that one. But either way, there is a lot to play for. And the drivers are probably under a fair bit of pressure to perform for their teams, who, as we mentioned, have done a lot of testing. And, well, they've probably got guys on the spreadsheets right now assisting the drivers, watching the race view, watching everything that's going on and seeing how they can sort of pull the wool over the eyes of the competition here.
Yeah, and what we've got to remember as well is, yes, we've got people going up, but we've got people coming down from Super League as well. I'm looking at the red arrows and the ghost speeds of the grid. So, plenty for those guys to prove as well. We've got 26 people in the server and they're off on the formation lap.
And yes, and it's going to be a huge grid indeed. The kind of grid we want to see in Formula 1. As we go to the grid, we have Lewis Beckers starting on pole, leading a Royal Blue Racing 1-2 from Simon Frillick in second position. Luke Maguire and then Fairclough are third and fourth. Then it's Pascal Poliens in fifth, and then Giuseppe Saranco in sixth, and then Sandeep Singh in seventh from Christian in eighth. Jan Van Christ is in ninth for Super Venturi. Then it's the Red Arrow Racing of Lalu in 10th, Dylan Platt in 11th from Patrick Rozak in 12th. Pascal Schmidt in 13th position, then Chris Butcher for THR. Oliver Pacrian, the other Super Venturi, in 15th. and then Mark Viet for Black Hawk Racing down in 16th. 17th is David Wasserman, and then Max Geisker is the other Mode Auto Concepts car in 18th. George Sutton in 19th, and then Liam Rance in 20th. As we move on to the latter part of the grid, it's Matthias Guzjak in 21st. 22nd is Fabian Strix, and then Tom van der Voort in 23rd. And then the last two on the grid are Hygo Poom and Ben Willis. And I have to say, a few of those names are a little bit of a mouthful for me. And, well, I hope I've not butchered too many pronunciations there, so I do apologise to some of the drivers for that. But we're coming towards the end of the formation lap now, and look at this. Look at how everyone outside the top 10 is starting on the medium or hard tyres, with the exception of down in position number 24, starting on the soft tyres. However, it does appear that Luke Maguire is in good standing for this race on those medium tyres in third position. If that is indeed the preferred tyre compound, we could see, well, that'd be a huge factor in this race.
Yeah, it's very interesting actually that his teammate Chris Butcher's on the hards as well. So, you know, he also tried to get into the top 10 on those mediums. Didn't work for him. He's down in P14 and he's on the hard. So, THR going for the harder compounds. Let's see how long these softs will last into the race. These guys have got to scamper away from that THR.
Indeed, as the grid lines up at the back, look at Lewis Pickers immediately lining up his car so that he can cut his teammates right across. That's Simon Frelick lining up for Royal Blue in second position. Now it's the nervous wait for the lights as we wait to get the season underway here in Superlights. And they are still waiting. They're being held anxiously and for quite a long time. There we go. The lights are on. It's 3 lights, 4 lights. We go to 5 red lights. And it is lights out and away we go as they start smoking on the grid. The car's held for a really long time and it's a good start for Simon Frelick, who soars into the lead ahead of his teammate. And behind, I think they're trying to make up some ground. There's a little bit of a challenge down into turn 1, but I don't think the Royal Blue Racing cars really want to have a scuffle. Here we go, onto the grass there at the back, and a little bit of a mess for, I believe that was Jan Vanquist. And now you can see a bigger scuffle further down the field. It's Luke Maguire who has actually managed to get past both of those Royal Blue cars up into the lead of this race. And look at the melee at the back of the field. Right there is the old Constantino up through the hairpin, up the hill and down into Sector 2 of this circuit. Overall, a pretty clean race start.
Yeah, pretty clean. A pretty good start to the season for all of the guys. A bit of a wide moment for Polenz. We saw through Tamburello getting pushed out wide, but the front guys definitely got away well. Frelick had a lovely start, but Maguire's managed to get his way up to the front past the 2 Royal Blues. Not the start that they would have wanted. The THR on the harder tyres, already into the lead.
And yes, and Luke Maguire, of course, has a strategy advantage, we believe, in this race from the commentary box, and now has the track advantage as well. And we know that those soft tyres are probably going to fall off very, very soon in this race. The drivers wanting to get rid of them as soon as possible. But how long they were held on the grid, the smoking of the cars at the front could be huge, especially when you have to consider engine life in this series. Here's Fairclough under a little bit of pressure from behind. He did think about the move, did Polenz, but then thought better. Liam Rance is trying to make a move around the outside of the Mode Auto Concepts car, and they make a little bit of contact, and round into the gravel is the Mode car, and that was Geitzner, I believe, and he's falling, tumbling all the way down the order. And thankfully the beaching isn't so bad in this simulator. You can get the car back going again, so it's going to be a huge damper on his race, but plenty of time to make back up time. And then here is Fairclough trying to have a little bit of a look ahead. Of course, there aren't many overtaking opportunities around Imola. We did say that it's quite a thin circuit. There's not many heavy braking zones and a lot of tight corners when there are heavy braking zones. So I think a lot of the drivers now are just going to sort of wait for the DRS and then try and pounce once that is afforded to them.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty strong story of last season, really, is how uniform everyone seemed to be in the first stint of the race. As soon as that pit stop came in, that pit stop window, then that's when the races started to come alive and we had quite a lot of on-track action. weirdly, we saw a bit of on-track action there at the beginning of lap 2, and Rance got together with Geisinger, and it was a little bit silly from both of them. It's the second lap of the championship, get yourself settled in. Talking of that, Sandeep Singh, look, going around the outside into Tamburello, gets squeezed out by Christian Pascal. Christian Pascal, plenty of experience on Super League, coming down to Super League Lights, and showing Sandeep Singh exactly what he thinks of his overtaking manoeuvre.
Of course, with no DRS just yet. Oh, that is a huge slide for Deegan Fairclough. And he's actually made a pretty good deal of that in the end and not lost too much time for his efforts. So he's certainly getting a few style points early on in this season. And perhaps a little bit of a concerning moment for him. And perhaps that's showing us a little bit about these soft tyres in this race. So perhaps I'm reading a little bit too much into that. As we can see, riding on board, the first onboard shot of the season is Darren Fairclough's. As heading through the chicane, and you can see how much these cars ride those curbs, and there will be DRS on this lap as Geisner has got a penalty. The Mode Auto Concepts car down in 26th position. He, of course, spun into the gravel on lap 2, and it is going to be DRS enabled this lap. So we're going to see the rear wings open up down this big long straight down into Tamburello, and Luke Maguire sets the fastest lap of the race, 1:20.7. Is Fairclough going to be close enough to the Beckers ahead to perhaps Bickers, I apologise, to have a go into Tamburello? He's going to think about it, but it's not going to come off for him.
No, I'm excited to see what Deegan can do this season as we look at Chris Butcher. So he's actually fallen down the order, down to 16th. He's back to 15th.
Oh, no!
Spinner in front of him. I think they might have avoided him. It was Pascal Schmidt. So it's a shame for Schmidt, having qualified pretty well, but he's gone round and they did so well to avoid him in that melee. But I was just saying, Chris Butcher's lost a bit of time at the start. He's already down, well, he was down to 16th, up to 14th now with that spin for Schmidt and the move past Dylan Platt. But that is, of course, on a hard tyre wearing THR.
Yes, he is on the hard tyres, so perhaps Chris Butcher is going to come into his own towards the end of this race when he can put on those medium tyres and have a huge run to the line. We do predict that it's going to be, for those people starting on the harder compound of tyre, they're going to go either from medium to hard or hard to medium. There's a one stop. The softer tyres we're expecting a 2 stop. And I wonder when we do start to see those first pit stops. Here is Fairclough after that slight slide earlier on in the DRS train. He's at the back of the DRS train here from sort of second to fourth. In fact, I think Maguire's got the DRS behind him as well. So it is in fact a huge DRS train at the front of this race. And here's Pascal Pollens, perhaps trying to get up to the back of that DRS train. There's been the sort of second pack here, 5th and 6th. And, well, perhaps Pollens prefers to be in 5th so he can sort of chase down that leading pack.
It was Grankfist going past into turn 1, Tom. It was Grankfist going from 6th to 5th. It was a good move, actually. Got it done before the braking zone, well before the braking zone. So no need for some scary side-by-side action. But Pollens now trying to stick onto the back of that top 5.
And yeah, that's my mistake. I apologise. As we can see, Lewis Bickers now trying to make move for second position in this race. Of course, our pole sitter has fallen down to 3rd. He didn't get a particularly good start in this race.
Frelick got over the curb there. Frelick really got over the curb. He lost a bit of time, and that's going to put his teammate Bickers right on his back end. Can he get down the inside? No, and they did well to avoid contact, actually. So down into Ravazza, that's going to cost him now, because his teammate will then get a bit more drive because he set the corner up nicely. So Bickers perhaps losing his opportunity there.
Let's have a look at what he can do down into Tamburello. He's alongside already, and he's perhaps going to get the overspeed down into the braking zone, and there we go. There's no funny business from the Royal Blue teammates here, as they're pretty content with running pretty far away from each other, I suppose, not wanting to battle too hard. As you can see, Giuseppe Soranchio getting through himself. That was on Rozak. And, well, the DRS we're seeing is so effective around this circuit. You can really overtake quite easily down into Tamburello, especially if the car ahead of you hasn't got the DRS and anyone ahead of him. And, well, it's just so effective. You've got such a long run down from the final corner, down into Tamburello, that you gain so much speed. It's really unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I was expecting Frelick to get a bit more slipstream there from Luke Maguire, but he just didn't pick it up at all. It was really surprising. So his teammate flew past, and then we saw the exact same with Saracino past Jukka-Pekka Lalu. And, you know, Lalu, don't discount him from a strong finisher. He's one of the best on his tyres in the whole series, and that really is his forte. So let's see what he can do on these soft tyres. Let's see how long he can eke them out and really bring the strategy back towards him.
And yes, and as I said, I do wonder when we're going to see those first pit stops start to happen. As you can see, everyone's still just kind of settling into rhythm in this race, as we've already got a back marker. That's the Mode Auto Concepts car who we saw in the gravel earlier on. He also had a penalty, so he's really been forced onto the back foot in this race, has that particular car. And we can see actually a little bit of a battle for 13th position. Chris Butcher around the outside, and that is a pretty impressive move. That's not the widest corner to be making a move at, and Chris Butcher has made a really, really good overtake there. And now he can set his sights forward on 12th position and perhaps get into the top 10, knock on the door of the top 10, and perhaps you can make something really quite special in this race. Of course, he's on the hard tyres, so he's really found that perhaps the drivers around him are struggling on their tyres, and those hard tyres really coming into their own as we head into lap 7 of this race. Here's Deegan Fairclough. Once again, you can see using as much curb as he likes. Still on the back of these Royal Blue cars, not really having the pace to make a move just yet, but perhaps that's a little bit of the strategy here. They know they're all in a DRS train with the leader, and perhaps they just don't want to make any moves and lose that DRS, because remember, the more they do this, the more they're gaining on the people on the alternate strategies behind. So perhaps this is a little bit of gamesmanship here.
Yeah, and this is where Luke Maguire up front's really got to be careful, because yes, he's on the more favourable tyre we think, but what he's got to protect from is the undercut. And at the moment, if they stay within that sort of gap, they'll come out way ahead of him. He'll have to do all the work at the end of the race. Really, what he wants to do is start building a gap towards the end of this stint, and make sure to cover off as much of that undercut as possible, so that maybe he's only coming out 2 seconds behind. I think we had a problem in sector 1 there, yellow flags very briefly, but it looks as if whoever it was has been able to continue.
As it is, I'd say that actually it's probably Geithner, as he's now DNF'd out of the race, and that's a bitter disappointing start to the season for him in that Mode Auto Concepts car, and they've rapidly rose through the career ladder. Of course, formerly 8-6 e-racing, and now established in Superlights, and well, perhaps not as well as they'd hope, particularly in the start to this season. However, they have got another car in this race, and he's running pretty well. Wasserman down in 18th, knocking on the door of the points. And now we can have a look at Lewis Bickers, still behind Maguire, though we are expecting those soft tyres to fall off fairly soon. We said that these soft tyre runners want to get rid of that tyre as soon as they can, and perhaps Luke Maguire now just feels that he's going to have the better pace. As you can see behind, Frelick actually had to defend a little bit from Fairclough, so perhaps Fairclough isn't playing ball to the game plan here.
No, they had a bit of interference. I think it was Pascal Schmidt in the TTF, as Perikian, I think, is pitted for Super Venturi. Perikian pitting for Super Venturi, potentially out of the race.
I don't think he's out of the race, perhaps, or he's on the medium tyres, so it would be on Garrett.
That may be why the yellow flags are out then, so he may have had an issue on the last lap, but he's in the pits. Poom now coming across the line for TTF, going up into P23, and Perikian does indeed exit the pit, so potential issue, maybe damage for him.
Back onto the medium tyres, so he doesn't fancy a stint on the softs to go into the two-stop strategy, which I think is quite interesting, actually. And we see Lewis Bickers once again, still hounding Maguire a little bit. It's 6 tenths of a second, that gap. And I truly believe that if Lewis Bickers wanted to, he could make the overtake here. I just don't think he wants to at this stage in the race. He was the pole sitter, of course. He didn't get a particularly good start. And you can see he's actually lost DRS to his teammate behind. So that DRS train has already fallen away. And now at this stage, Lewis Bickers just trying to stay on the back of Luke Maguire. He knows that Luke Maguire's got the better strategy, perhaps.
Oh, Granqvist, very shaky.
Yeah, Granqvist, I think he just underestimated the closing speed there to Fairclough ahead. And we've got a few people in the live stream chat, Ruben Machete, saying that he thinks the soft tyre is actually really good. And so far, it's holding on quite well. The soft tyre runners aren't losing too much ground. I think it's really going to be later in this race that we see whether the soft tyres have worked or not. But right now, Luke Maguire really isn't pulling away, especially at the stage where you'd expect the soft tyres to start falling away.
No, but it depends how much management they've put on. We've seen there hasn't been much fighting between this top five, and as you rightly pointed out, Bickers looks quite happy to sit in at the moment. He wasn't close enough on the last lap to make a move, but it'd be interesting to see what he does do if he does get close enough. Those soft tyres, I'm imagining another 5 or 6 laps maybe, and then a pit stop, probably a 2 stop for them now towards the end of the race. If you're on a soft tyre, probably 1 stop not in the question.
It would be interesting to see if any of the teams who did start on the soft tyres and perhaps aren't in the running in this race do go for the audacious strategy and see if they can make hards last to the end. If they can perhaps get to lap 15, 16 on the soft tyres. We see Pascal Pollens try to go for the move on Jan Granqvist, who of course started way down the order, has had a really rapid first in up into 5th, trying to get 4th position, and perhaps Vanquist could be on for a pretty good recovery drive into the podium. He started P9, he's now P5, so he's driving very well, but perhaps we could see some of these soft tyre runners try the 1-stop onto hard tyres. I don't think it's possible without significant tyre management. Perhaps it's something that they can try to get some track position in this race.
Yeah, but the problem is if they were maybe starting 13th, 14th and they had nothing to lose, I would probably go, yeah, fair enough, it's worth a try. I think I'll lose so much time with, is that a move from Granqvist into the Variante Alta? No, it's not. You couldn't get through, so Fairclough covers that off, and now Granqvist has got to drive in his mirrors a bit. Fairclough's starting to lose a little bit. We saw him sliding earlier over the curbs and getting a bit wide at Piratella as well, so Fairclough may be starting to make his tyres scream a bit more than his rivals around him, and that's why he's starting to drop off the back of the Royal Blue Racing cars ahead.
We've seen him slide a bit, Fairclough, and perhaps he's just used a little bit too much of his tyres, overdriving the car in this first stint. Now Vanquist does go for the move. He's going to go around the outside into the Tamburello, and that's going to be a textbook easy move under the DRS. You can see Fairclough really struggling with his tyres, but Vanquist makes a mistake, and now around the outside, Fairclough onto the grass. And, well, he had the room, and I think those tyres just haven't got the grip to hold on around the outside there. It's a very, very fast corner, and perhaps on the marbles just lost a little bit of grip, and now down into 6th is Deegan Fairclough.
Yeah, and this is where we want to see Deegan. This is where we want to see what he can do this season, because I think it's undoubted that he's got the pace to really compete for victories in this championship. It's just the temperament wasn't quite there last season. A few silly mistakes, especially in situations like this where he's perhaps gotten a bit unlucky. There you go, another mistake there. And too many DNFs last year from silly mistakes where we know he's got the pace. It's a little bit infuriating. Easily got the talent to be one of the stars of the championship, and can't get the races done. So let's see what he can do for the rest of the race. See if he can get his head back together and regroup. He's still sixth, remember. There's still plenty of points there, and he's probably faster than the guys ahead as well. So let's see what he can do. But he's got to make sure, and he does pit indeed. So that's the tyres going. So lap 13. So prediction for 15, 16 laps on the softs, looking pretty good at the moment. Of course, fuel's going down as well, so the next stint will be a little bit longer.
And as we see Pisquel try to make a move, as Jan Vanquist now trying to get up to 4th position to continue his charge through the field. As I think really as well, you've got to think of the bigger picture there for Fairclough. If he wants and has aspirations of getting into Super League here, he's got to put a good, you've got to iron out those silly mistakes. You've got to put a good run of performances together, because Super League teams, even if you're trying to get up to Super League in the team he's currently in, the Super League teams need someone who is consistent and can put together a full season without any silly mistakes, because that's the kind of championship where it can really cost you, even more so perhaps than Super Lights.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's just come out on the set of the medium, so now is his chance to regroup. But I think Granqvist did get overtaken by Pollens on the last lap as well in all of that melee. So Poland's up to fourth and doing a nice job considering he looked as if he was struggling early on. Now he's starting to come back to him, and that's all about the temperament, as we were saying with Deegan. Pascal, got overtaken a few times, got pushed out a bit wide, but regrouped and he's come back and he's reaping the rewards for it. Still though, because just sitting in the wheel tracks of Luke Maguire in that battle for first, Frelic's nowhere near them at the moment. And because happy just to keep that DRS tow going and pulling himself along behind the THR.
As this has worked out quite nicely for Royal Blue Racing, actually, as they've got Frelick now who can act as a little bit of a roadblock behind. So if Lewis Bickers does need to drive a little bit faster, push a little bit harder to get past Maguire, as we see, actually, here's the move from 13th, as we see Rozak get past, I think that's one of the red arrow cars, down into Tamburello. And that's the move on the DRS, and oh dear, that was a huge slide. And who's that behind trying to have a bit of a knock at the door? Is that one of the Mode Auto concept cars, perhaps? I don't think so, actually. It's George Sutton who's in 14th.
Surchik trying to get through on Saturn there. So Surchik in the Black Hawk Racing just trying to use a bit of opportunism to get through as the two in front of fighting. Didn't quite come off for him, but it does put him in DRS range. Maybe he can join the party next time round.
Yes, definitely. And, well, George Sutton is just showing that you can't do anything when someone behind you's got DRS, really. As long as they get a good exit out of that final corner, you're really a sitting duck. And I think that's something that's been pretty consistent throughout all of the series that we've seen.
Yeah, and Grandcliffe's about to have that happen to him as well. He's got Sandeep Singh all over the back of him. He's dropped off the back of Pascal Poland, so maybe Grandcliffe's starting to struggle with the tyres in his Super Venturi, but actually got off the final corner quite nicely. Sandeep Singh, DRS, wide open down the straight. He just hasn't got the pace to get on terms down that straight. Couldn't get the move done. It looked for all the world that Grandcliff was going to lose 6th place there. But yeah, Singh can get it done.
And oh no! Who's that off? And I can't quite see who that is. And Singh dramatically avoids that. It is Powens in the number 12 car. And he's just lost it on his own, I think, all the way down into 12th position. And that was a huge moment. And I have to say, all parties involved did a very, very good job at avoiding a bigger collision there. And you just saw a plume of smoke as he held the brakes and locked up all the tyres. And of course, that will almost undoubtedly flat spot all of his tyres. And he'll have to come into the pits now and get those changed with great haste indeed. As Sandeep Singh has, well, managed to lose pretty much 0 time from that little excursion into the gravel. And, well, I think his heart rate will be a little bit higher now than it was this time last lap.
What it has done is put Christian Pascal, though, past both Grandcliff and Singh and Saracino. So all three of them have dropped down. Pascal has been to P4 for HG now. He managed to miss all of the chaos and got through while the others were having to take the escape road. There, Peels into the pits, I think, is Lalu. Yukipeka Lalu into the pits for Red Arrow. So interesting, he usually goes a bit longer on those tyres. Maybe he's getting out of this gaggle. Singh does this time make the move round the outside into Tamburello.
And there we go. We can see that Grandcliffe's probably had the better pace throughout this first stint, as they're now on to 16 laps on these soft tyres, which is quite impressive indeed. But you can see that DRS is just oh so powerful, and actually it's the Road to Formula Racing car. And well, Sandeep Singh would have felt quite sore if it was his teammate that ruined his chances at a good finish in this race. But up in 5th, a very, very good drive for him so far. And Jan Grandquist, of course, also having a pretty good run at it. And I think what's going to be crucial now, as you can see, Luke Maguire has for the first time broken DRS range on Bickers behind. So perhaps this is now where we start to see the medium tyres come into their own. And perhaps now this is where Royal Blue have to start thinking of who they give the first pit stop.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. It completely depends on what's happening. The problem is that they're both sort of in a no man's land at the moment, so there's no real advantage to giving one preference over the other. So I imagine they'll just go with first in line, which is Bickers. And just looking at lap times, Deegan Fairclough 119.6 a few laps ago, miles faster than anyone else. Looked like he was on the comeback charge. Follows it up with a 121.6. So I don't know what happened to Deegan there. But he's just done the fastest middle sector of anyone. The Saracino pits now from P7. That puts Butcher and Veit and Platt and Sutton all up a place into the top 10. So Butcher's just lurking steadily, isn't he? He's 15 seconds off the lead on the hard tyres. Let's see what his strategy brings him. Probably a top 5 on for Chris Butcher at the moment.
Particularly with the pace on the soft tyres, because obviously if you're on the soft tyres you get a much better a much better exit out of that final corner, and then you can really accelerate down the straight. However, we imagine perhaps it's going to be one stop from hards to mediums here. It'll be interesting to see what a lot of these drivers put on, actually. Is Dylan Platt now? He's trying to make moves up the field. He's currently sitting down in 9th position. He's got Reet ahead of him in 8th, and of course Chris Butcher in 7th, who's on the long first stint. A little bit of a mistake from Platt, and it'll be interesting to see if he can keep touch with these two ahead of him. And I think being in a DRS sort of train in this race has proved beneficial throughout, is even though you're using a little bit more tyre wear, you're getting that pace on the people behind you. You don't have to worry about your mirrors so much as catching up to the people ahead of you. As Frelick has come into the pits, so it is actually going to be the second of the Royal Blue cars who gets preference on the pit stop. Perhaps that was agreed to beforehand, perhaps it's just sort of out of necessity. And judging by the halo, it appears that Simon Frelick is actually a reserve driver for this race, which is very interesting indeed to see him so far up the order, particularly sitting in someone else's car. As I've been told in my ear, sorry, he's not. So the halo sort of deceiving us there. He's got the hard tyres on.
Yes, you are right. It did definitely say Bickers, didn't it? On the halo. But yeah, Frelick is good a driver in the series, to be completely honest. Always quick whatever he jumps in. So Frelick doing a nice job and comes out crucially in front of Deegan Fairclough. So Fairclough, with all of the traffic he's had to get through, and that one blip of a lap that he was about 2 seconds down, it's probably cost him track position there over Simon Frelick. So Frelick manages to get out on the hard tyres.
So still just the one DNF in this race. We start to see the pit stops pile in. I think it's just Bickers and Maguire that we're now really the major players in this race waiting to come to the pits. There we go, Bickers into the pits for Royal Blue Racing. And actually the two Royal Blue cars are in each other's car, which is interesting, as Bickers is in Frelick's car and Frelick is in Bickers' car. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but we'll see what Bickers puts on. I believe it will be the hard tyre if he is to follow his teammate. And it should be a fairly quick pit stop. And there you go, he's already away. And it is going to be the hard tyres. So we'll see how deep he can take that into the race. And if the soft tyres are doing 20 laps, I don't think it would be unheard of for the hard tyre to do the 30 laps.
No, it wouldn't. I'm a bit surprised. But I think it comes back to the whole argument we were having earlier about how much time you lose in that pit lane with the cars flying past you. So yeah, that feels like it might be a one-stop. What if it is a one-stop? That puts Luke Maguire in prime position, doesn't it? With the tyre advantage he's going to have, he's going to be able to pit later. Probably go another 5 laps if he wanted to, or he could probably pit now and cover it off as well if he wanted to. And it also brings Chris Butcher back into the race as well. Where would he come out if he pitted right now? A bit down the order, but he'd be on the softer tyres, able to be a bit racy in the second half of the race.
As crucially, Bickers come out into a bit of traffic with George Sutton just ahead. But another important note in R Factor 2 is that, of course, there is no puncture mechanic in this game. So theoretically, as you can see, actually Sutton really struggling on his tyres. Bickers much faster on the brand new hard tyres. But of course, with no puncture mechanic, you could technically run these hard tyres right up until they're on 2%. And you'd be slower, but you wouldn't be in danger of your race being finished. So perhaps, I think my point really, as we see now, Bickers will probably get past pretty comfortably down this long pit straight. But I think my point is that you can make tyres last as long as you want them to, really, in this game. It's just a matter of pace and being able to keep someone behind you.
And that's the problem. Last season, the pace drop-off was massive, really, when they came to it. That's why we were seeing 2 and 3 stop strategies in races, in some of the races, just because the pace advantage that a fresh set of tyres were giving you was so critical to how you're finishing the race. As Fairclough goes a little bit wide again, so yeah, just needs to settle down. But he's right in the mix here, Deegan Fairclough, despite running wide earlier, as Rozak is the next into the pits.
As George Sutton's really causing a few problems for Frelick here, as Fairclough's already all over the back of Frelick, and George Sutton, well, he's managed to keep the Royal Blue car behind him, and perhaps a little bit, Frelick will feel a little bit hard done by, as they're not really in the same race here, George Sutton.
Fairclough's got a run as well. Frelick went really wide through Aqua Minerale. Fairclough had a run, but it won't be able to get anything done. So it'll be interesting to see who gets what sort of run out of Ravazza this time round. down the bottom of the hill now into Ravata. Let's see what Sutton does in relation to the other guys. Of course, absolutely no obligation to get out of the way. He is 6th on the road through tyres. He does go wide though.
And Sutton really struggling on the tyres, actually. He was 2 seconds off on the previous lap of the race leader. Dylan Pat is into the pits. And now Frelick is finding himself defending from Fairclough. Fairclough does get ahead in the end. Cuts off Frelick a little bit aggressively, but all fair racing in the end. You can see the brake discs glowing in Simon Frelick's car, as they really have to put a lot of force through them. As now he's trying to stick with Fairclough, and I feel a little bit hard done by there, as Fairclough was actually nowhere near him as they came out of the pits, but of course just held up by George Sutton, which is just one of those unfortunate things in these races. You can't expect Sutton to give up too much time, as of course it is technically his track position. Now Fairclough really just sort of accelerating away. Here is Pasquale trying to make a move on, I believe that's actually George Sutton, as it happens. So George Sutton causing everyone problems in this race, in the Red Arrow racing car. And you see Luke Maguire, race leader, into the pits. This is actually going to be a crucial pit stop, as we wait to see where he comes out in relation to the people who were on the sort of similar pit strategy to him. Hard tyres on for Maguire.
So this should comfortably get him to the end of the race. He's got a few laps on his rivals around him, so it's just where he comes out now in relation to those guys. Obviously Veit behind pitting as well. He started on the same tyres as Maguire, so pretty good strategy from all there, because you will see probably about 3 seconds behind as they come out of the pits, maybe a little bit more. Fairclough, remember, will probably have another pit stop to make, pitted on lap 13, so quite a while before the guys around him probably will make another pit stop.
And it's interesting to think, with Luke Maguire now on the hard tyres, the same as Bickers behind him, has he actually made a little bit of a mistake not starting on the soft tyres? If the soft tyres were able to go pretty much the same distance as his mediums, or is that pit stop more to cover off Bickers behind on the newer hard tyres, I wonder?
No, I think it was just he had the more rubber to push with, so he opened that gap out over Bickers, just giving himself a buffer, and he's got fresher tyres all the way to the end of the race. I think it's a good strategy from Maguire. He had the pace to do it. Butcher tried to do the same thing, didn't quite get the qualifying lap together. It was so close in qualifying though, so maybe not a mistake from Butcher, just one of those things. Maguire had the pace to do it, and it's given him the advantage in the race, so definitely not a mistake to not use the softs at the start, because at the end of that first stint we saw him pull that gap out, and that's why he's got such a big gap now.
And we'll see how that develops, as that's George Sutton into the gravel, and that's let Sandeep Singh through. As it wasn't Sutton, sorry, was it? It was Lalu. That's my mistake. It was one of the Red Arrow racing cars anyway. But,
it was Lalu. He got wide, but both of them, as you said, making the mistake, and that has put Saracino on the offensive into Tamburello. Couldn't get it done.
That's thrown me off, because that was where George Sutton was on the last lap, but he actually pit on the previous lap, so a 50-50 chance, I suppose, and it wasn't to be this time. But 8th position for Lalu for Red Arrow Racing, and his teammates actually helped him quite a fair bit here, as his teammates sort of Constantinoed up a lot of these cars, and now Lalu running in the lofty heights of 8th position. I don't think he owes us a pit stop, does he? He has come into the pits.
He has, yeah. A few laps earlier than I thought he would. Probably a lap or two earlier than the guys around him as well, but should be alright to the end of the race if everyone else is. So, and as we said before, usually one of the better guys on the tyre management, so should get to the end. Yucapeka. It's just now how competitive he can be. Same with Fairclough. Fairclough's on the mediums at the moment. He's back. He's in 4th. He's all over the back of Maguire, so he's just trying to make up as much time as possible now before a last pit stop. He'll almost certainly pit to go onto the softs at the end, but really needs to get past and start getting down the road, and there you go.
And yes, we now see Fairclough just ahead of Bickers. As if you excuse me 1 second.
Yeah, important for Fairclough to make that move. As I said, he's got a bit of a gap now. He's got 10 seconds in front of him up to Chris Butcher, and he can really use those medium tyres now to create a bit of a gap, and let's see how racy he can be on his last stint. The problem is it's such a long pit lane. I don't know where he's going to come out in relation to the top guys, but it's still probably a top 5 on offer should he be able to get that raciness at the end with the soft tyres. But he's got to get down the road now in the next 10 laps.
Yes, Chris Butcher has got a 9-second gap to Luke Maguire, of course, and he does still owe us that pit stop. So I think now his tyres are starting to fall off the pace a little bit. He has done half race distance, mind you, and I imagine he's got to get to about lap 30 before he can consider pitting in this race if he really wants to make that strategy work. And I think the real question is whether he goes onto those soft or those medium tyres. And well, it's going to be a very interesting development indeed. But right now he looks like he's pretty set for a top 5 finish.
Yeah, what you got to remember as well is that the fuel's going down in these cars. So if people were going 20 laps on softs at the start on high fuel, Butcher, if he wanted to pit on lap 31, 20 laps to the end on lower fuel, should be easily doable. It means it'll be really racy, but I expect him to go another 10 laps or so. Same as Fairclough, and then have plenty of chance to attack on those softs at the end. Maybe 15-16 lap sprint with both of those on softs. That's what I'd imagine. Just because that is a racing strategy and probably well within the limits of the tyres as well.
And yes, and of course he's got a clear track ahead, has Chris Butcher, so he hasn't got to really worry about any pressure from behind. And this is where, really, actually, in the case of sort of racing your own race, the psychological factors at play there. And I think it's going to be difficult for him because he's obviously got the pressure from behind. He's going to want to push, but he's just got to relax and race his own race, which is sometimes quite difficult to do. As we see Fairclough is actually now breathing down the neck of Luke Maguire a little bit. It's down to about 3 seconds, that gap, I think. And, well, it's all to play for.
Yeah, it is. So Fairclough's gone back behind. He's back ahead of Bickers. Sorry, my apologies. I'm just having a look at the timings now that we're sort of halfway through the race, and Maguire's doing a nice job, personal best on the last lap. Poland's had a personal best at one point. George Sutton's just on a personal best. So the guys starting to find their feet after their first stop, or for most of them, their only stop. It is really about how far Fairclough can get down the road now. And get stuff done to see where he comes out at the end. That's really the storyline now, Butcher and Fairclough, where they're going to end up. It looks like Luke Maguire is comfortable out in front in the THR. That tyre advantage at the start really paying dividends.
Yeah, that's for certain. And, well, Luke Maguire driving a very, very good race indeed. And I did criticise his strategy, albeit only 5 minutes ago, but as he's gone into the early stage of this second and the long slog stint, it's really working for him, and I think that's going to be one of the main takeaways from this race, that you can afford to start on the worst tyre because of the extra pace it gives you, especially if you've got extra pace anyway, as in the case of Luke Maguire. Here is Giuseppe Sorinco, as despite butchering that name, he is breathing down the neck of the Red Arrow car of Lalu. Hasn't quite got the pace just yet to make an overtake, but he is there. He is hounding away, and I think perhaps in a couple of laps, as long as Lalu stays out of DRS range of Singh ahead, this is really Saricano's chance to make the move on those medium tyres. And perhaps medium tyres suggest that he's looking at a 2-stop.
Yeah, he did pit quite early as well, Saracino, so that would explain that one. Just having a look through the order then, just past halfway, Butcher's still out in front but yet to pit. Then Maguire, the de facto race leader in P2 for THR. Teammate, of course, Deegan Fairclough, yet to make his second stop as we expected him to, but he's P3, Bickers 4, Simon Frelick 5, the two Royal Blues were on the front row. Christian Pascal 6, Sandy 7th, ahead of Lalu and Saracino. They're in that gaggle of cars. And Saracino's actually just gone back behind Jan Grankvist. We've got 5 retirements: Liam Rance, Patrick Rozak, Tiger Poon, Pascal Schmidt, and Maxi Geisinger, who we saw actually collide with Liam Rance earlier on in the race. So Rance retired, was the latest retirement about 3 laps ago.
We have got a flurry of retirements actually in the last couple of laps. Looking down the order, we've sort of missed those, and we've seen a few yellow flags flash up every now and then, but nothing too damaging to the rest of the race, but clearly damaging to their races for the 5 retirees that we have got in this race, as we now see, oh dear, Luke Maguire, that back marker certainly getting out the way quite late, but soldiers on, and he's got 2 seconds to Fairclough behind, so no real pressure from behind from Luke Maguire. He's just got to focus on perhaps looking after his tyres and then slowly getting that gap down to Chris Butcher, which isn't essential, as we know that Butcher certainly owes us a pit stop. So really, Luke Maguire is just plain sailing in this race, just trying to get no track cut violations, trying to not get into any hassle with lapped cars, and just trying to keep up a consistent pace, which he's doing pretty well right now, 120.4, and how razor sharp consistent these Superlights guys are is so impressive to me. He's on all this messed up tyre strategy. We've got so much at play in this race, and he's still doing 120.3, 120.4. They're so consistent, pretty much all of the field.
Yeah, and this is where it becomes a mental game then, doesn't it, really, a mental race. He knows he's got a buffer, he knows he's got the better strategy out the guys around him, he knows that Fairclough behind him is on a different strategy, and he could probably let him go, but what you don't want to do is anything that affects your rhythm. As soon as you get out of that rhythm, you start making mistakes. If you make a mistake, you look like a fool at the end of the day. So no, that's what Luke Maguire's got to focus on now, is that consistency that you were just talking about, and making sure that every lap is as close to the lap before as it was, as it can possibly be. Because we've said plenty of times before, consistency is what wins your championship. You can be as fast as you want for 3 races in a year, but if you don't finish the rest, then it's no good. You've got to be consistently fast, and it's the same from race to race, it's the same from lap to lap.
Sandeep Singh now is breathing down the neck of Pasquale for 6th position, and whilst they do seem like minor positions right now, if he was to suddenly find a flurry of pace, Sandeep Singh could find himself rather marvelling in the extra points he gets from 6th position. Of course, 1st to 15th does get points and get yellow flags in sector 3. They're not clearing up with great haste, actually. As oh, there we go. That was the issue, and I couldn't quite see who that was. I think that, judging by the rather grainy picture I'm looking at, I think that was one of the Mode Auto concept cars, actually, the last one we've got running here. I can't confirm that, though. Someone will have to check on the timing screen. Sandeep Singh really close, actually, now, and perhaps thinking about a move on the next lap. You really don't want to make a move around any corner apart from Tamburello, I don't feel, around Imola.
No, you don't.
You're just asking yourself to get overtaken again, down into Tamburello yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So you're opening yourself up, aren't you, if you make a move at the wrong place. So it was Ben Willis, by the way, who went off at the final corner. He managed to get back into the pits for drag racing. But not how he wanted to take Ravata at all. It was actually quite late out of the corner, wasn't it, the mistake? So as Gazowski now into the pits as well for Hyperion Esports, so Mateusz Gazowski into the pits and trying to get his way up into the points. We saw this plenty of time last year. You're looking at the guys down the bottom. Willis, we just saw, made the mistake. Gazowski in the pits, Van der Voort in P18, Perikian in P20. No, if they can just hang in there, there'll be points available. We saw plenty of mistakes towards the end of the races last year, and quite often if you finish, you'll get points. So it's not a time to give up at the moment. You've got to keep going, keep ploughing along, and you might get a reward for it in the end.
Dylan Platt is interesting, actually. He's the only driver right now on soft tyres, so he's really having a rapid stint towards the end. Sandeep Singh stays behind Pasquale in this race. He isn't making any moves just yet. And perhaps he's content a little bit staying behind Pasquale. Because, there is no rush. We've got plenty of time in this race, and their chance at getting up the order further into 4th as we see Wasserman into the pits for Mode Auto Concepts. So certainly not the driver that had spun, so I do apologise for that one. But as we head into the final stages of this race, it looks less and less likely that they're going to be able to challenge for 4th, 3rd, and the major positions in this race. So perhaps Singh just wants to bide his time and take his time getting the move done. Because I suppose the last thing they want at this stage is to be engaging in a ding-dong battle towards the end, because it would just lose them both time.
Yeah, and you know it's all about making your move at the correct time. Here goes Chris Butcher then being overtaken.
As he
No,
lets him through in
not
the
quite
end.
being
Oh no, he
overtaken.
doesn't.
I think it was a backmarker trying to lap himself. But yeah, so Chris Butcher on the lap before though, lap 30 of his stint, Fairclough into pits for his second stop. Chris Butcher did his personal best on lap 30. That just goes to show you how good his tyre saving's been on this set of hard tyres. So Maguire 3 seconds behind. We've got yellows in sector 1 for somebody maybe having an off. But Fairclough is into the pit and will come out of the pit. I think it might have been Lalu potentially going downwards.
It is Lalu. I saw him falling down the timing tower, and we had a few more yellow back in sector 2. And I hope for Lalu's sake that wasn't a... No, he's not going through sector 2. So who is having an issue in sector 2? I can't see anyone falling down the order, so perhaps that could actually be one of the back markers slowing down.
I think Lalu went off. Lalu got overtaken by Saracino, so Saracino's gone through. But Lalu's all good, no damage. He's back on the road. He's just lost a bit of time. So Lalu in P9 and carrying on for Red Arrow.
That's when you can sort of pretend that no one saw it, nothing happened, and just soldier on with the race. Here is Saracino trying to make the move on Jan Granqvist, and well, after a pretty good first stint, Jan Granqvist hasn't really made many moves in this race. Chris Butcher finally comes into the pits. He's done a monster 33 laps on those hard tyres, which crucially means that Luke Maguire is certainly safe to the end, although I don't think there was much question of that right now. And interestingly, he does opt for the medium tyres. So I wonder what the thinking behind that is after it's been proven that the soft tyres can go 20 laps. Perhaps they just want security to the end of this race.
Yeah, it'll allow them to push a little bit more as well, having pitted with 18 laps to go. It just means they can eke a bit more performance out of those tyres for a bit longer maybe. Obviously the softs are more racier. I would have expected him to have gone another 2 laps maybe and then put the softs on, but you know, the mediums does just mean that he'll be able to push a little bit longer. Fairclough did exactly the same thing as well onto the mediums, pitting a lap earlier. So let's see what these guys can do. Butcher P10 at the moment. Let's have a look at how far it is. Yeah, you know, there's a pack of cars ahead. Probably could get up to P6 here ahead of Jan Granqvist.
There's a lot of overtaking to do and not a lot of laps to do it, though, in fairness, from Chris Butcher. About 17... my mental maths is not incredible. Perhaps about 17 laps to go, I'd say. Say a glance. And yes, that's about right, actually. Because down in P10, Chris Butcher, his teammates all the way in the lead. And perhaps THR, as this season goes on, if they are to be one of the teams that are fighting for the championship, perhaps if this continues, Chris Butcher being a little bit further down the order than his teammate, perhaps that could harm them in the championship fight. Though I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself there, as we see Platt is going to be overtaken by Chris Butcher. Platt, of course, the last one on the soft tyres, and Chris Butcher gets past with no great difficulty at all. Of course, brand new sticker medium tyres, and I think he's just going to do a bit of a rocket ship here. There we go, purple in the middle sector actually from Chris Butcher, so he's really fast.
Yeah, Fairclough's just made his move past Pascal Polenz behind as well, so he's on the charge trying to get back into the top 10. So both these guys now really starting to push. And yeah, Butcher's got a nice little gap, a nice bit of free air to use his tyres nicely. Doesn't have to take too much life out to catch up, and then he can go on the attack.
And tyre wear really isn't a concern for Chris Butcher. He can afford to have a little bit of pushing, and well, I think that's what we're seeing now with, in fact, yes, it was purple middle sector again, after actually Fairclough has gone purple in the first 2 sectors on this lap, so he's pushing from P12 as well. And Chris Butcher still trying to make moves in this race, but here is Fairclough. He's caught up to a little bit of traffic ahead, and I think he's going to see this as traffic with that kind of pace, as we can see Saracino into the pits. And that's perhaps a little bit surprising, actually. I don't think he owed us a pit stop, so perhaps that's the alternate strategy coming into play. As you can see, who's that ahead trying to make the move around the outside into Tamarella. Whoever it isn't particularly working. And now Fairclough's going to try and have a little bit of a look around the outside. Not quite going to do it. And then he's going to have a little bit of a switchback, say thank you very much, and make that move pretty spectacularly. That was on Veet, actually, and that was quite opportunistic, but also quite well made, I'd say. And you can see just how much pace he actually has over these two on those new medium tyres. Down the inside into one of the faster corners on the circuit, and he's made the move once again. So Fairclough absolutely rocketing ahead in this race. And now we're really seeing that perhaps this strategy of starting on the hard tyres, doing that monster first in, perhaps it's really working.
Yeah, because Fairclough, by going soft medium by pitting early, has essentially done what Butcher's done by starting on the hards, just taking one more stop to get into that situation, and it has. He saw the traction he had out of Tozer up into Piratella. An easy move, taking candy from baby really, and Veit had no idea out of Tamburello, and Platt had no idea into Piratella, did he? So, and he does pit now, Dylan Platt, off those soft tyres. So Veit for Black Hawk into the top 10.
And it's so frustrating when you're on those soft tyres and you know you can't do the end of the race. You're in such a good position in terms of the track position, but you still have to make a pit stop. And all you want to do is battle, all you want to do is fight on, but you have to lose that time through the pit stop. As we now look at Sandeep Singh in 6th position, having a chase down of Granqvist. As we can see now that all the order has sorted itself out, that they've got themselves up into 4th and 5th. As 5th and 6th, I apologise.
Yeah, I think Granqvist just gone through on Singh actually, looking at race view. I think Granqvist managed to make that move on Singh. Granqvist was at the head of that queue with Lalu and Saracino and Polenz before Saracino and Polenz pitted. But now Singh's dropped out of the top 5, so Granqvist flying and on a personal best again. So he's looking as if he's going to dip into the 119s now on his tyres.
And yes, and I'm just wondering whether it was actually Singh and Granqvist that we were looking at on the previous lap, with Singh still trying to battle Granqvist, but I'm not too sure. As now he pushes on in this race, 0.7 of a second that gap now, and here's Chris Butcher trying to make further moves in this race on the red Arrow racing car, and once again on those newer tyres up into P7, Chris Butcher, and he's certainly a man on a mission in the final 14 laps or so in this race. And well, Chris Butcher driving incredibly well on those newer tyres. And I think he'll be putting this strategy into the playbook to use again in this season. As you can see now, what's the gap to Singh ahead? It's just sort of flashed off on our screen. 3 seconds. So he could quite easily find himself getting into the top 5 in this race.
Yeah, definitely. The problem is that Granqvist was actually faster than him on the last lap, so Granqvist has found some fantastic pace on those hard tyres. Saracino down in P13 on the soft tyres is in the 118s now, so he's the fastest man on track by some margin as well.
So yeah, the strategy certainly going into the playbook. And THR have perhaps pulled a little bit of a blinder here on both the cars. And maybe Chris Butcher isn't going to be the teammate that's so far behind Luke Maguire this season. Perhaps he is actually going to be right up there with him when all is said and done. And well, that's obviously all important for the team's championship. And I know it's early, but you have got to be considering it at this stage. As well, Sandeep Singh and Jan Granqvist having a battle is actually going to help Butcher. Of course, they'll be losing time as they battle. And Singh still on the back of Granqvist. He just can't find a way past, I don't think.
Yeah, but Granqvist only got through a few laps ago. I thought he then put a 119 and thought he was going to drive away, and all of a sudden Singh has found a bit more speed. He's coming back at him. So these two really look as if it's whoever's got the DRS and a bit of the slipstream is going to be faster on a given lap. And as you rightly said, that's bringing Chris Butcher into the equation. Fairclough not too far away from Lalu will try to get there as well. So, you know, these guys on the alternate strategy starting to come into their own. Van der Voort in the pits probably takes away his chances of points Fasserman for mode in P15 and the final points position at the moment. But he's got George Sutton in the Red Arrow race in the second one in P16 on the soft tyres, absolutely flying up to the back of him.
This is going to be the move, perhaps. Singh now trying to use all the DRS, all the top speed he has. He is going to get a lot of closing speed, and Granqvist is going to have to go defensive. However, it's not quite going to be for Sandeep Singh. just yet. He's going to have to wait yet another lap, and it is so frustrating. And Chris Butcher really isn't making up too much ground on these two. Looking at the time at last lap, he was a second faster, so I take that back, actually. It's just that on the timing tower, it doesn't look like he's making too much ground up on them, but clearly he is slowly, and he'll perhaps be in this battle within a couple of laps. But we'll have to see how that one pans out. Right now, it is Sandeep Singh still trying to just hound Jan Granqvist and get that position back.
Yeah, meanwhile in the pits, Fabian Schirik is back in the pits for Blackhawk. Will he come back out still in the points? I think so. It'll be close if he does. Sutton gets start to the season for Veet in P10 at the moment.
And yes, of course. And I think another person to keep an eye on in the top 10 is, of course, Fairclough, who's also on a similar strategy. We now actually see Sandeep Singh. He's closer than he was on any lap. He goes around the outside at Tamburello, and that was smart driving from Jan Granqvist, actually, as he just he didn't commit fully to the defensive line. He just sort of left a little bit of a gap open around the outside, as if to tease Sandeep Singh, and then just closed the door ever so slightly. That was very smart defensive driving. And, well, I think Jan Granqvist would quite like to hold on to his P5 in this race. A little bit of a squirrely for Sandeep Singh. And look who's in the background already. Chris Butcher on the faster tyres, on the newer tyres. And he hasn't got to worry about tyre wear once again. So I think he's going to breeze past these two into P5, especially with 11 laps left in this race.
Yeah, and there'll be a ghost speed there very shortly as well, because Deegan Fairclough passed Jukka-Pekka Laulu as that battle was going on. So Fairclough now, as you can see just in the background underneath the bridge on the way up to the Variante Alta, is closing in on this battle as well. So Butcher needs to get through quickly before Fairclough can have a go at him.
And Singh is now going to look at Chris Butcher in his mirrors and think, well, I've got to get past this lap, because otherwise I'm going to be eaten up by Chris Butcher. And, well, the Butcher is planning to do some Butcher work, clearly. And Sandeep Singh is still a little bit far back to make a move on Jan Granqvist. And this just seems so frustrating. They seem to be on such similar pace, these two. In fact, they're within a tenth of each other almost every single lap. And I think that is going to be oh so frustrating, driving that car, knowing that you're similarly paced to someone. You've got someone really fast behind you, and you've just got to try as you might to get past. And so far it's in vain, as we get yellow flags in Sector 1. And we can't quite see who that was, probably someone further down the field. As these two.
What we have had, though, is we've had a move for the podium positions. Is Christian Pascal past Simon Frelich for P3 in their HD Esports Blue Bolt car, and number 4 has gone into P3. So great race for Christian Pascal. He's sort of threaded his way through chaos in the early stages, and now he's made a move for P3. Fantastic race from Pascal. As he said, plenty of experience from Super League down into Super Lights this season, and up past Frelich, who's just started to lose a bit of pace.
Clearly wanting that Super League seat back, and who can blame him? Of course, Super League will be this week as well. You can catch that on the YouTube channel. And well, that's going to be an exciting race if this is anything to go by. Very similar hardware. As now here is the move from Sandeep Singh around the outside, and he was close enough this lap down into Tamburello. And now Chris Butcher is as close as he has ever been. And this, perhaps, is going to be his time to make the move. And I wonder if he is going to wait for the DRS zone, or if he's just going to use all of his tyre advantage to make the move as soon as possible.
He's got to get it done as soon as possible, because Fairclough's going to be lurking in the not so distant future. So 9 laps to go at the end of this one, and you know, Butcher can still see P5 down the road. What he can't allow is Singh to get away from Granqvist, because if Granqvist starts holding it up now and Singh gets away, that's P5 gone. So he's got to get through, probably into Tamburello on the next lap.
If he does get P5, I'd say he's very deserving of driver of the day. As we continue on, and Chris Butcher down this straight, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what he's able to do. Jan Granqvist hasn't got DRS on Singh. Singh has really pulled away. He clearly had the pace, And now we watch as Chris Butcher, I think the outcome of this particular skirmish is going to be quite a predictable one. We're going to see if Chris Butcher is going to be able to make the move. It's not really as predictable as we think, and he makes the move down the inside into Tamburello. Not quite able to find the braking potential there. And, well, Jan Granqvist is staying ahead ever so slightly, but Chris Butcher isn't going to lay down that easily. And now I imagine he'll make a move into one of these following corners rather than waiting to the next lap. Of course, they're losing time to Singh ahead, and Singh having a pretty good deal of this. He's already lost DRS on these two, and Chris Butcher thinks about the move down into the right-hander, then thinks against it. That was probably ended in contact. And Jan Granqvist is suddenly staring down at P7 after he was holding P5 for such a long time. And already, Chris Butcher, and I think this lap it will actually be all down the inside, as that was really, it caught him off guard, I think. I don't think he wanted to go for that move, but he was kind of forced into it by just not anticipating how much Granqvist's tyres have actually worn off at this stage in the race. And now around the outside, down into the penultimate corner. And what this is going to do is actually make sure that Granqvist has a lesser exit, a little bit squirrely from Chris Butcher, and now opens up the throttle and will open up the DRS at the line. And now I think this is really an opportunity for him to make the move. Look at how much he is struggling as Froelich has got back into the podium position. And now Chris Butcher around the outside is going to have the overspeed, surely this time round, and they make contact. As they make a lot of contact, and Chris Butcher almost goes around. He has to sort of lift off the throttle and let Granqvist back through.
Yeah, that was great work from Granqvist, though. Really good work. Twice in a row, 2 times into Tamburello, defending in different ways, but managing to keep Butcher behind up the inside into Toza this time for Butcher in the THR, and they're still locking wheels, still banging wheels. Now he's got the inside to Piratella. This should be the move done. But Granqvist had the better traction. Stunning work from the Super Venturi driver. Meanwhile, Lally back ahead of Fairclough as well.
It's not the cleanest, however, it is probably hard but fair racing, I'd call this. And, well, Chris Butcher is going to be so frustrated. He had P5 pretty much nailed on. As we see in the background, I think that's Lalu being pressured by Fairclough. He almost had it pretty nailed on for P5, and now he's going to have a pretty intense last few laps to try and get back. How many seconds is that now? It's more than a second up to sing up the road, because he's already disappeared out of our picture. So it's 5 seconds. Yeah, unbelievably already.
About 5.5, 6 actually now.
As now Chris Butcher surely on this lap. Around the outside, once again, Granqvist is as defensive as he can be. He brakes as late as he can, and they make contact, and Chris Butcher's almost round. As in fact, he is round in the end. And that is a bitter, bitter end to what was a spectacular charge. And he falls all the way down into 11th position, Chris Butcher. And I think he saw his life flash before his eyes. He saw his race flash before his eyes. And, well, it was ended. And I think that was needless contact, really. Jan Granqvist defending as hard as he could. And perhaps 2 into 1 didn't go. I don't know what the steward's verdict will be on that particular trouble.
Yeah, it's definitely the 2 into 1 doesn't go. It was exactly the same as the lap before, really, apart from this time I think Butcher decided not to yield. He thought he was entitled to a bit more room. Granqvist must have thought he had the line, and yeah, that's what's happened in the end. Granqvist now, though, under a load of pressure. Fairclough back past Lalu, and look at this, fight and Polenz all over the back of Lalu as well. So a real ding-dong now. 5 cars involved for 6th place. Granqvist really starting to struggle on those tyres. 5 laps to go at the end of this race.
So as it happens, it was in fact a race that settled down towards the start and then really got exciting in the latter stages. And there's still a lot of excitement to give. As you can see, Granqvist now is really going to be a sitting duck in this one. He can't quite defend as he did with Chris Butcher against Fairclough, who has made a 2-stop strategy work in this race and is up into 6th position. And please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure he's made 2 stops in this race.
Fairclough's made 2 stops, yeah.
Because he stopped earlier, didn't he?
Yeah, stopped on like 13, then went on to mediums, then went back onto another set of mediums. It's worked out well for him, considering... You know, we were talking about his temperament earlier on, and you know, this is a really strong start if he can hold on to this for Fairclough. Really impressed with his drive. Going back to the Butcher and Granqvist incident at the moment, it all stems back from the slide that Butcher had in Ravazza. He had Grankvist exactly where he wanted him to be. He really should have been passed by the start-finish line. But he had a slide, it put him on the back foot, and that meant that he had to go side by side into Tamburello. And it's funny how little moments can decide the fate for you further down the line. That was that moment, that little slide at Ravazza.
It's the court of public opinion in YouTube chat is blaming Jan Grankvist for that one. And, well, we'll wait to see what the stewards say. If it is
I'm going to go devil's advocate. He was on the inside, but you're right. Let's see what the stewards say.
And, well, now you can see, this is Veit trying to make a move on Lalu, who in himself is trying to make a move on Grankvist. And, well, I think there's been about 18 different pronunciations of the various names up and down this grid order today. But we'll try our best, as always. And it's that DRS train. And with, 4 laps to go now, 5 laps to go. That's not a long time at Imola. So if they are wanting to make any moves in this race, they've got to get a move on.
Just looking at the gap, Maguire comfortably ahead of Bickers. Bickers hasn't done anything wrong in this race, and he's, 17 seconds down, give or take? Yeah, really, really good drive from Maguire on that alternate strategy from the start. And the THRs will be thinking that they should have had at least a double top 6, perhaps a double top 5 with Butcher, obviously a bit unlucky. Now he's trying to get back towards the top 10, Poland's ahead.
I don't think any of us quite know how that's happened here. Luke Maguire getting 17 seconds. They were so close in the first stint. Then Luke Maguire's really just let the car go in this second stint and just pulled away so much. He could almost make a pit stop for fastest lap here. Well, he need a few more seconds, but I mean, I think at least hyperbolically shows you how dominant he has been, particularly towards the sort of second half of this race. As they continue in this frustrating DRS train where not much progress is being made. That being said, here is Lalu hounding Jan Grankvist, and if he falls all the way back down to P9 after what was all in all a pretty good drive from P9, then I think he'll be a little bit disappointed in himself.
Yeah, he's had a lot going on around him as well. So not bad at all. A bit surprised he was one of the other guys to have pitted. That maybe hasn't played in towards his advantage because now the drivers around him have got fresher tyres. Just having a look down the lower ends of the points, Platt is still in the points P13, Sutton P14, Surchik ahead of Wasserman, and as I say that, Wasserman gets back through on Surchik. So the pole falling out with Blackhawk Racing. That's not going to be a double points finish unless he can get back through, but Dylan Platt doing a nice job. Saracino will be disappointed after looking strong throughout qualifying to be P12, but he has made an extra stop, of course.
It's interesting as well to see through that chicane how much curb they take, as now Lalu is as close as he's ever been, and Jan Grankvist once again is going to be a bit of a sitting duck, and I don't think he'll be able to defend this one. As there we go, Lalu makes the move as easy as you like. We've probably seen that exact move be pulled off about 20 times in this race so far, and well, it might be pulled off with a couple of more times with 3 laps to go.
It's interesting with Grankvist here, though, is that we saw him make a move on Singh earlier on, and it's just he decided to push the tyres a little bit earlier in the stint, and now he's starting to pay the consequence for that, isn't he? Starting to really on the back foot. A few people with fresher tyres around him as well haven't pushed them as hard, and now they're really starting to reap the rewards of their patience at the start of the stint. Veit, one of them for Blackhawk Racing, really sensible drive today, and all of a sudden he's looking at a top 8 finish for it.
And you have to feel for him because of how impressive everyone said he was in that first stint. To fall back to where he started is really disappointing. And, well, he hasn't quite fallen back just yet, but I have to feel that if Mark Veit has anything to say about it, it's not going to be too long before he does fall back. On to the penultimate lap of the race now is the race leader, and these 3 cars will follow shortly. Is Mark Veit going to be able to make the move? Grankvist has got the DRS, but Mark Veit has got the overspeed. Is he going to have overspeed enough down into the chicane? And a little bit of food for thought. Has Grankvist, as he is able to edge out Mark Veit on the defensive, has he actually sustained a little bit of damage in that contact with Butcher? That could perhaps offer solution to how he's so far down on top speed, as now Mark Viet still has to stay behind, and perhaps it's going to be a final lap overtake in dramatic style. As you could see, a driver behind, a number 12 car, having a little bit of a look at this battle with Prix and guys, perhaps hoping they come together. Granqvist has got form in this race, and perhaps it's a little bit harsh on him. As Luke McGuire now onto the final lap of the race. Mark Viet, however, is going to have to be pretty brave in this final lap to get past Jan Granqvist, who isn't making it easy for people to overtake whatsoever. No tyre concerns at this stage. They've only got to do one more lap, 4.9 more kilometres. And I think we are going to see a pretty exciting finish. Here we go then. Mark Viet needs to get a perfect exit off this final corner. Granqvist doesn't get a perfect exit onto the final corner, and that could be crucial. Viet has such a lot of overspeed now. He goes the inside this time round, and I think he's going to make the move before the corner. He is up into P8. So a pretty good drive has turned into a pretty mediocre drive for Jan Granqvist. As now we see Luke McGuire rounding the final couple of corners now through the chicane, down into the final complex. And was that a bit of a lift off for a second there? I wonder what happened there. As he rounds the final corner, rides the throttle through the corner. Not textbook. However, what has been textbook has been his drive. He celebrates across the line, and the first round of the season does go to Luke McGuire in emphatic style. 20 seconds the gap to Vickers behind. And I can't quite believe my eyes on that one, especially with their pace in this first stint. The pole sitter does finish in second position, and it looked almost certain that Frillick is going to get third in the end, with Pascual in fourth. Perhaps feel a little bit disappointed he didn't get the podium, but nonetheless a pretty respectable drive from all. Here's Deegan Fairclough on the two-stop strategy, probably my driver of the day in this race. He was pretty much nowhere. We criticised him at the start of the race, and he's shown great maturity to get back up the order. Jan Granqvist will be a little bit disappointed with that 9th position, but unfortunately that is racing. As we see Luke McGuire celebrating his winner. Hard-earned and well-earned victory, I have to say. Who's your personal driver of the day, Ewan?
It'd be that man on screen right there. They got the job done in qualifying to start P3 on a harder set of tyres. No, we saw how close qualifying was, so to do that on those tyres was pretty sublime, and it proved to pay dividends in the race as well. You know, miles better strategy because of that advantage that he had with the tyres, and it's paid him nicely, isn't it? So, no, probably driver of the day. Other than that, Christian Pascal getting through the mess at the start of the race to get into P4.
And do you want to do the honours of the results, as Luke McGuire does some donuts in pretty good donut form, I have to say.
Absolutely. So Luke McGuire then, with the win to kick off the season ahead of Lewis Vickers and Simon Frelicker, Royal Blue Racing 2 and 3. Christian Pascal fought his way up to P4 in the number 4 for HG Esports. Sandeep Singh doing what we all know he can up into P5, Road to Formula Racing. Deegan Fairclough, as you rightly said, plenty of maturity to get back to P6. Rebecca Lalu, P7 with all sorts of chaos around him. Mark Viet, very, very good drive up into P8 for Black Hawk Racing. Jan Granqvist for Super Venturi, plenty going on for him, bit of contact towards the end, but still comes home in top 10 P9. And Pascal Polenz was in top 5 for a long time, but ends up in 10th position. Chris Butcher had the contact with Jan Granqvist. He will be bitterly disappointed for THR in P11. Saracino on a 2-stop P12 for HG Esports Blue Bolt. Dylan Platt for TR Geese Energy P13 ahead of George Sutton, the first of the lap cars, and David Wasserman, who did manage to get back past the second Black Hawk of Serchik for the final point, and then bringing home the rest. Gazowski P17, Francesco Leone, few stops for him, P18 for Ghost Speed, Tom Vandervoort P19, and Oliver Perikian P20. The DNFs, Ben Willis for Dry Grayson, Liam Rance we saw retire, as did Patrick Rozak, Hugo Poom and Pascal Schmidt. Disappointing race for the two TTF Racings. And Maxi Geisinger for Mode retired very early on.
And after a pretty good race, we will have some interviews for you in a moment. But let's first have a look at the calendar. Next round is the Bahrain Grand Prix on the 22nd of March. Then we go to Australia, Portugal, Azerbaijan, Monaco, Canada, and then Britain. And then we have a little bit of a break, I believe. In fact, no, it's the spring break, isn't it, in this league they have. So never mind me. But obviously, the second leg of the season is Austria, Hungary, Belgium, Italy, Singapore, Japan, Mexico, and Brazil. So overall, a pretty good calendar. And, well, I don't think we can call the title just yet after one round. And that will have to be done in November at Brazil. So we'll go to some interviews in a moment. And I can see we've already got a few drivers raring to go. And I think it's going to be a pretty feisty post-race engagements here, particularly in the stewards' room. As well, take your pick, Ewan. Who are we going to interview first? I think it's got to be race winner.
Absolutely. So we will welcome in Luke Maguire, the THR driver, who dominated really that race in the end. Luke, congratulations! Great way to start the season, and really it came down to the tyre strategy in qualifying, didn't it?
Yeah, I'm gonna put that down to Toby Davis. He was the one who was, telling us all week that we need to do a one stop, and our wear on the soft tires wasn't good enough to do it with the C2s. So we said we'll go C3, C2, and see how it goes. And I did probably one of the best qualifying laps in that car on the C3 in qualifying, and it really paid off in the start. I initially had a bad getaway, but I think the two Royal Blues kind of tripped over each other and allowed me to kind of get through.
Yeah, because we know how close on performance you and Chris are in that THR. We know the practice that goes into it, and then all of a sudden to see the gap between you both in qualifying sort of shows how good that lap from you was. Go on.
I was gonna say, I think, to be fair to Chris was very close to me on qualifying. He just didn't get the lap in. What we wanted to do, we didn't want anyone to know that we were going to be going on the C3s in qualifying, so we went on them quite late in the practice, and so no one could copy our strategy or think that we're doing something different. And I think Chris couldn't get used to the lack of grip as quick as I did, but don't take away from Chris. He was very quick around here, and it's kind of a shame he couldn't get the race together.
Yeah, because we saw him coming through the field actually towards the end, so it shows how much speed we were in both the THRs. But for yourself, it looked pretty in control through a first stint. You're only about 2 seconds ahead of Lewis, and then all of a sudden it seemed like you just turned on a second gear and drove away, and all of a sudden, looking at the 20-second gap at the end, was that just you having plenty in reserve and being able to switch that on in the second half of the race?
Not really. In the first stint, I was actually behind on my tyre target. I was like pushing too much and trying to keep them, out of DRS, but it was hard. I don't know, that we built this setup on a C2 hard full fuel, and that's kind of where it came, to life. So we did a lot of CT running, and that's kind of the tyre we were most comfortable on. That's the tyre that the set was built on. So it really came into its own when we went on the C2, and was able to push through the whole stint and get a nice gap.
So perfect way to start the season. Bahrain next. What are we expecting from you there? Same sort of thing? You got any more tricks up your sleeve? You don't have to tell us what the tricks are, but what have you got coming?
I've one massive trick, that is I won't be here at Bahrain. I'm missing that race, but I'll be back again after that. But I hope that the team gets nice points there, and I hope we get a nice setup going.
It is a good trick, and it's nice to give other people a chance, I guess, as well. So, nice one, Luke. Congratulations, and hopefully we'll see you back in, not next race, but the race afterwards.
Exactly. Cheers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tom, I think we're going to bring in third place. We haven't got Lewis Bickers, but we'll bring in third place, Simon Frelick. Simon, welcome. Congratulations, podium start of the season. It looked as if actually you were going to miss out on the podium, but you managed to get back through on Christian. Tell us what happened.
Well, first of all, the qualifying has been a little bit of a surprise for me. I thought we were, at least me, I'm going to be down in P6 or P7, but somehow I managed to stick it on the front row with my teammate. We thought Luke was quicker. I mean, we thought we were quicker than Luke, but then our engineer said he's a medium, so that was not a pleasant surprise. But we kind of went into the race hoping that we can keep Luke behind, but just yeah, probably could see that into turn 1. I just outbroke myself. I kind of parked it on the apex of turn 2 or 3, and then Luke just got past both of us. So it wasn't the ideal start, but a double podium for us was still on me and Lewis. After a while, it was clear that Lewis is the quicker one, so I just let him through. And then I was just managing my tires and my push to pass. Having a little battle with Christian, he was pushing me a lot, but managed to get past him. And yeah, overall a pretty good race and a first podium in Superlights. So I'm happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, great way to start the season. Clearly, plenty of pace in that Royal Blue racing car with both of you on the podium as well, and really opens up a load of opportunities going forward. I imagine this season we saw what THR did with their strategy in qualifying, and I guess looking at race strategies, qualifying strategies, when you know you've got pace in the car, it does open stuff up for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course. We'll definitely have to look for the next races to try and improve to get up to the THR's pace, because Luke's pace in qualifying is just ridiculous. So yeah, we need to work on that.
And same question to you as I just asked Luke. Obviously, he's not here next time, but going into Bahrain next, what can we expect from you? What can we expect from Royal Blue? Is it going to be more of the same? Does the track suit you the same way that Imola does, for example, or no? Is it more looking at the long game now?
I mean, we will prepare probably the same way, trying to do the best we can. But from my experience, Bahrain wasn't really the best track for me. But so was Imola. It isn't the best track for me. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the race. Maybe I can break the streak of bad luck in Bahrain.
We look forward to it, and obviously, like I said, plenty of pace, great way to start the season, double podium for the team, and right in the championship.
Yep.
So congratulations, thank you very much, Simon, and we'll see you in Bahrain.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you. So no Lewis Bickers tonight, so I think, Tom, you can round us out.
Yes, certainly. We had a few more people in the waiting room, but I think we'll, for the sake of time, we'll save that perhaps for next week. And it's going to be interesting to see what the stewards have to say about that Jan Granqvist and Chris Butcher thing. And I can see they're in a voice call together right now, so I owe to be a fly on the wall in that conversation. But anyway, as we do thank you all very much for watching. We had very, very good viewership this evening, and a nice active chat as well. So we do thank you all very much for engaging in this stream. It was a blast to commentate on, and I have been Tom Dillon. He's been Ewan Gale, and we both thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you all later. Good night.